Or good evening. My name is Suzanne Taylor. I'm with the League of Women Voters. Thank you for coming to our District 2 School Board Candidate Forum featuring the two candidates who showed up. And we're very proud that they did come, and we're looking forward to having a good conversation with them. If we can start with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. So if everyone can stand, there's a flag here, and there's also little flags right over there. So take your pick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much. You can have your seats. First of all, everybody make sure their cell phones are either turned off or muted. We got a lot of teachers in the room, so I don't want anyone to get called out. So this is our third forum so far. We did a District 4 County Commission forum last week. On Tuesday, we did a District 1 County Commission. This is our school board for District 2 upcoming. In the next few weeks on August 1st, we have the Titusville City Council, and August 3rd, we have the judicial races, which is the one everybody wants to see because nobody knows who to vote for with the judges, although I do, so feel free to tell me. If you have, I love when people ask me that question because I feel like my vote is compounded.
And Suzanne, District 5 is next Thursday.
Thank you. District 5 school board, right? School board is July 30th.
In Palm Bay.
In Palm Bay. Sorry about that. I did not write that down on my notes. So, a couple of quick announcements, please listen up. So this event is being recorded and it will be posted on the League's YouTube channel. Recordings of this event may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of the event to be broadcast in its entirety without editing, altering, or excerpting, except by media reporting on the event. So you probably know, but I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the League. We've been around for 106 years. When women obtained the right to vote in August of 1920, we're a nonpartisan public policy organization. We never have endorsed and will never endorse a candidate or a party. That's not what we're about. Just today, I answered a bunch more questions that we got in our email. League, tell me who I'm supposed to vote for. And I keep saying, that's not what we do. But here's where you can find the information, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We do, however, encourage informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. So that's what we're all about. The candidates today are Kyle Savage and Kelly Wentworth, so we can give them a round of applause first. Thank you for coming and being brave. I think being candid is one of the bravest things that you can do, so I'm really proud of them for just even showing up. So the candidates have not been provided with any of the questions in advance. They're all going to be questions that they know to answer, though, I promise you. They've been developed in advance between the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. All candidates were invited to attend, and just last night the third candidate indicated that his plans had changed and he's not able to make it. So all candidates were invited. So you know, in the back on my left, there are cookies and water. Feel free to get something if you need it, especially water. I know I have mine with me right here. Feel free to get it. Just try to be as quiet as you can. Bathrooms are just outside the door for the men, and then outside the door and across the little lobby for the women. I'd ask you, once we did that applause, hold your applause until the end. We don't applaud after someone asks a question or answers a question. We hold that until the end, please, out of respect for everybody. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ava Taylor, who is the president of the NAACP Central Brevard branch, who is representing our partner organization hosting this forum. Thank you, Dr. Taylor.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. Yes, I will be serving as the moderator tonight, and we have Lisa, who will be serving as our timekeeper. You see her right there in the front. So on behalf of the NAACP Central Brevard branch and the League of Women Voters, we'd like to thank you for coming out to tonight's forum for District 2 School Board. Regarding tonight's format, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement. This will be followed by a series of questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. There will be no rebuttal comments from candidates. We will conclude with each candidate providing a 2-minute closing statement. A yellow warning card will show when 15 seconds remain, and a red stop card will be shown when a candidate's time has expired. A little bit about the office. The Brevard County School Board is a governing body responsible for the oversight of the Brevard Public Schools. 5 elected school board members represent geographic districts while making decisions that affect students, families, employees, and community throughout Brevard County. The school board is responsible for establishing district policies, adopting the annual budget, providing fiscal oversight, hiring and evaluating the superintendent, setting the district's strategic direction, ensuring accountability for student achievement, approving curriculum and instructional resources, overseeing school facilities, and long-range planning. The school board members will serve 4 terms. And so now we will go on to the opening statements. And we'll start with Kyle Savage.
Yeah. First of all, thank you to League of Women Voters and the NAACP Central Brevard chapter for putting on this forum. I think it's wonderful for voters to come out and hear from candidates. Guess I was supposed to stand up. My name's Kyle Savage. I'm a veteran, I'm a teacher, I'm a former teacher, I'm a BPS dad. My story to this is very different than a lot of people. I left home at 16, I stopped going to high school. I started my path a little bit from behind, but that's all right. I ended up getting my GED, I joined the military. I learned a lot of great values from the Army. I learned the value of hard work, integrity, and just putting one foot in front of the other, and that's really what I'm doing with this race. Also, as a military police officer, I met my wife, Megan. We have 3 amazing boys, and I broke my cycle, and I'm so happy about that. When I got out the military, we chose Brevard to raise our children. I became a 5th and 6th grade math teacher and science teacher at Cape Elementary, and I realized teaching was probably the passion of my life. And I got to be the teacher I wanted to be, and the teacher I needed when I was in school, so it was amazing. But you quickly realize that as a teacher, there's so many things that impact your classroom from outside your classroom, right? And you realize that stuff needs to change, and as a parent, you know, stuff needs to change as well. And while this board has been focused on the politics and just the craziness of the world, our students aren't getting the education they need. Our students aren't prepared for the real world. So that's really why I'm running. I think we need to focus on increasing our enrollment. I think we need to focus on increasing our career technical program. But most importantly, I think we need a quality VPK program in every school because that's really going to help early literacy rates. So I'm Kyle Savage. I'm so grateful that you guys came out tonight to hear from us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here this evening, and thank you for coming out to listen to what we have to say. I'm Kelly Wentworth. I'm running for school board in District 2. I am a parent of 2 BPS children, and like many parents, I've spent countless hours volunteering in the classrooms. I like to work in the library. I've mentored some of the after-school clubs. As a business owner, I have sponsored teacher appreciation events, and I've also sponsored student t-shirts. Basically, whenever I see something that needs to be done that I can help out with, I jump in and do what I can. But I finally figured out that there needed to be more than just volunteering to be done, right? With some of the challenges facing our school district right now, we need leadership more than ever. And so that's why I decided to run. And I bring a little bit of a unique perspective to this race. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and an MBA. I have over 20 years of experience in financial management and strategic planning. I've worked on large scale budgets. I've done risk identification, and I've helped organizations make sound financial decisions and long-term planning. Among the 8 candidates that are across the 3 seats that are available in this race, I'm the only one with this much financial management background. And that's really important because we have a district with a $1.6 billion budget. And I know that the board does not manage the day-to-day. We don't process payroll, we don't write purchasing orders, but we are supposed to be asking the tough, difficult questions, and we're supposed to be identifying risks before they become a crisis. And we need to remember that every student is affected by the decisions that are made. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and I'm looking forward to answering questions.
All right, Kelly, might as well remain standing because
The first question.
You got the first question. Although Brevard Public Schools is an A-rated district, district data shows differences in academic outcomes among Black students, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and other student groups. What specific strategies would you support to improve outcomes for these students, and how would you measure success?
Yes, so we definitely need to start identifying early education opportunities a lot earlier. Strengthening VPK is definitely an issue. We need to really be working with the community to make sure that that happens. Another thing is we've got to stop micromanaging our teachers. We need to allow teachers to do what they do best because they know what their students need. The other thing is a lot of times there's a certain amount of time set to do certain curriculum, and if the student doesn't meet or doesn't get to that place, the teachers are told to move on. They have to keep moving on so they keep hitting the standards. So we need to identify a lot of those things, and that's where we need to go with trying to improve those reading scores. I will say that in District 2, we have 4 elementary schools that are reading, that are 50% or more of their students that are reading below proficiency, and got less than a 3 on their FAST test this year. So that is a major concern in District 2. I know that they've been talking a lot about the A rating of the district, but there's definitely room for work and definitely room for improvement. And those reading scores will also impact all those other scores. Word problems that you're reading, those affect your civics scores for the older kids, your science, all that's reading based. So if we're not teaching our kids to read and making sure they're at grade level, it's just a domino effect that keeps moving.
Thank you. Kyle?
So, first of all, we need to recognize the issue. And if we talk about District 2 schools, none of our schools were built after 1970. There's 10 schools that have less enrollment than Cape View Elementary when they closed them. 5 of them are in District 2. So while we talk about the academics, it extends well past that. But that's one of the biggest reasons why I think every one of our elementary schools needs a VPK program. And I'm gonna tell you why. That's a voluntary pre-kindergarten program. The data shows you, if a child at 4 years old goes to a VPK program, they outperform their peers by 3rd grade. If they go to a Brevard Public School VPK program, they outperform their peers that went to any other VPK program in this state. That's why it's at every single one of our schools, because when we talk about all of our students accessing it, how can that happen unless it's at every elementary school? So that's number one. The second thing is, we have to let our teachers teach. And we need to look at what we're doing in the classrooms, what's successful and what's not. The amount of technology that we're using in the younger grades, is that right? I personally don't think so as a father that's got a 4-year-old at home right now, and we fight to keep them off of electronics. So I really think we need to get back to books, get some pencils in our kids' hands, and get them learning back to the fundamentals of reading. And that's really gonna help all of our students. And we need to make sure that when we say all of our students, we actually mean all of our students. And we're looking at that data and we're tracking it, and then we're holding people accountable. And it's not necessarily just the classroom teacher, but it's the whole district. If we're spending $1 to get a program to help our children academically, then is it performing and is everybody getting access to that? Because right now that currently doesn't happen.
Thank you. The next question.
Oh, I guess.
There's only 2 of you, so I'm trying. What additional supports or services do you believe would help students with disabilities achieve greater academic success?
So one of the largest learning gaps right now in our district is students with disability. I was at McNair Middle the other day, and one of their largest gaps as well was students with disability. So it's an issue. I really think we need to focus on quality teachers. First of all, there's studies out there, if you go become a teacher, they make you take this class and they show you all these things you can do on a sheet of paper that helps education, right? Helps students better perform. You know, the number one thing always is a relationship with a high quality teacher. We are losing teachers. And when we're losing regular classroom teachers, gotta be honest with you, we're losing ESE teachers even quicker. So we need that quality teacher. Then we need to make sure they have the support they need in that classroom, right? And that we're following what's good for students. We're pushing them out in classes, we're pushing them into inclusion when we can. But let's talk about what it looks like in that ESE classroom. We can't have these behaviors where these students are injuring themselves and other students and teachers. You can't learn in that environment. We gotta make sure that class size for ESE is proper, Because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, state of Florida has a class size amendment. It's not followed because the district doesn't average. The district says, we'll take all the kids in elementary school from 3 to 6th grade and average them out. And that's how we meet class size. They do the same thing for the ESE classroom. And then finally, I really want to make sure that we're giving the students the support. Maybe it's some summer school stuff, maybe it's enrichment, so that we're not losing any learning gaps that we have throughout the year.
All right, Kelly? Yeah, so one of the important things that we've got to address is the fact that we're not putting the supports into the classroom that we have. I mean, this year we made a cut to literacy coaches, and those are needed to help those kids that are struggling and maybe need a little bit of an extra help. We're reducing social workers, we're reducing all these support systems and leaving the teachers to do it on their own while they have a full class of students and trying to meet every student where they're at. So that's a big part of it. We also, it's really important that we take the time to see what's going on in these classrooms and really address the issue at hand and making sure that we do have qualified teachers in the classroom. Most of our teachers here have been teaching in the district for less than 5 years. And most of them are second career teachers who do not have the training and the experience that they need in order to support the ESE students that are in their classrooms.
Thank you. The next question. How do you recommend strengthening VPK?
Is it me still? Oh, that's right. Okay, so strengthening VBK, I think it's really important that we get into the community and really work with the community on that. I'm not sure that we can actually put VPK in every elementary school. I think that's really great to do, but I think that you're also taking away from the community itself. You already have daycares that are having established programs, and they already have, if you move those VPK classrooms into the schools, you are actually those teachers are going to lose their jobs. They're not qualified to be teachers at Brevard Public Schools. And so they are going to lose their jobs. We can't transfer them from the daycares over. Those daycares are also going to lose the revenue that they have and that can affect small businesses. And I know that the outcome of students are the most important, but at the same time, we actually have schools that are at 100% capacity. So in order to put a VPK in those schools, we are going to have to add portables. We're going to have to add capacity to schools where capacity doesn't exist. So I'm not saying that VPK is not important, and I'm not saying that we don't need to strengthen that with the community. But I think instead of making a blanket decision without working with our community first to strengthen that, we need to go into these communities. We need to make sure parents understand that VPK exists and what that program is doing for their children and how important it is to get them into them. So I think strengthening it into the community is definitely a place that we need to go.
Yeah, with all due respect, that's where I'm going to disagree. My only focus is students. Not trying to be mean to anybody that owns a small business. My number one goal is student performance. And what the data shows us is that they go to a Brevard Public School VPK, they perform better in 3rd grade. Literacy rates are better. And I also want to talk why it's important and what it looks like. So, if you're a parent and you're trying to figure out what to send your child, and you have 2 or 3 children, maybe you can't get your child to 3 different locations. But maybe if all your children go to the same facility of Brevard Public School, you can get all your children there, drop them off, and pick them up. So we do need to make sure that we're doing all the extra stuff that the private providers do. I agree, we need aftercare if we're going to do VPK program. We probably need to offer some type of half-a-day program as well, because that's what parents want. And at the end of the day, we're not here to tell the community what they need. We're here to represent the community and offer them what they need and what they want. And I want to talk about this cost or, we can't get these teachers or something. Let me tell you, if a private business can open up a VPK program in a Publix that's been vacant for 10 years and make it work, I'm pretty sure a government agency with a lot of buildings and a lot of them are not full can make it work. And yes, the teachers that currently teach VPK at a private program can't come and teach in our public schools. But guess what? Let's recruit them because we need more teachers. Let's provide them the education they need and bring them in. And I really, really think that this VPK issue is big because our public schools has already been going in the neighborhood. They've already been trying to get enrollment up. And there's still pockets of Brevard where the children aren't enrolling in VPK because there's not access to them. So when we talk about having an equitable education system, that means no matter where you're zoned for, your school has a VPK program.
Thank you. The next question.
You can stand.
We'll figure this out by the end of this.
All right, so what is your stance on vouchers and their effects on public schools? And should voucher funds follow the students if they are not able to perform in a private or charter school?
So I support school choice. I think parents deserve a choice on where they send their children. This is my issue with the current voucher program. There's an article in, I think it's NPR, Pro Public Club, that talked about money that was following students ended up at go-kart tracks, trips to Japan, Disney annual passes, somebody went to Fiji. I get it. I mean, we could probably stretch the rules and say that's an awesome field trip and they're learning a lot. But I don't know if taxpayer dollars in the state of Florida should go to that. And as somebody that's been involved in public education, understands the statutes, there's about this much statutes for public education. It's like 2,000 pages or something. If you're a charter school, it's 160 pages. If you are a private school, it might be 80 pages. If you're doing one of these micro homeschools, I think there's like 12 pages. And they have literally found out that there's been teachers that have gotten in trouble for things that are just unreal, right? And guess what they do? They go teach at the charter school or they go teach at the private school. So I think when we talk about voucher program, parents deserve accountability. Parents deserve to have an apples to apples comparison when they want to choose their children. And I truly believe if you receive taxpayer money, you need to be accountable to taxpayers. We need to measure the learning gains of wherever this money is going to. And I gotta be honest with you, this isn't really a right or left thing. You know, there's a Republican senator, Senator Gates from Florida. His son was in Congress, that's how I remember it. He sat on a committee and said, the state of Florida lost over like $500 million last year, and they can't track it. Think about that. They won't give public schools any extra money, but these people are using money to go on trips and they can't track it.
So earlier this week, I saw a graph that said that 15% of the students in the state of Florida are using school choice, but 25% of our education dollars are going to those students. So that's a disparity, right? So I've always said that student choice, not public schools are not for every child, right? And so parents do need to make the decision to decide what is the best pathway for their child. But it can't come at the expense of public education. And the reason for that is because public schools are committed to serving every child. We turn no child away. But when you start diverting school funds to private schools, they do get to make decisions. They get to decide who comes in. They get to exclude you because of behavioral issues. They get to exclude you because, let's face it, the color of your skin or the amount of money in your pocketbook. They are allowed to do that. And again, I think we all agree that if there are going to be taxpayers going to school choice, that has to be accountable. Our board sits up and talks about how we have to let charter schools and private schools do their thing, and that they would be less desirable to parents if they were held to the same accounting standards. So if that's the case, why are we spending our hard-earned taxpayer dollars to those education options?
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I do get to say, yeah, like I said, we'll figure this out by the last question.
All right. The question is, how do you define an underutilized school facility? And will you protect dedicated spaces like art rooms, music rooms, or labs from being classified as empty space for charter use?
Yeah, so that's a big issue right now. So my kids go to school in the district. So Kennedy is underutilized right now. McNair is underutilized. And my kids going to Kennedy, they don't have the same options for electives that some of the other larger schools do. You just can't put enough teachers in the schools to be able to offer this wide range of options for them. That's happening at McNair too. McNair was built as a magnet school, and they have some amazing STEM classrooms. They're not being used because you can't staff them. So we definitely do need to look at that. Now, right now, the district is talking about turning McNair into a K-8 school, and then they're talking about doing it next year. I don't know how that solves the utilization problem because one, McNair is a very old school. It was built in, I think we already talked about this, the late 60s, early 70s. And so if you're gonna do K-8, it needs to be a brand new dedicated school, dedicated spaces for the younger kids and the older kids, but you can't be doing that. You can't retrofit a really old school. The other thing is nearby Gulfview also has an underutilization issue right now. And where do you get those kids if Gulfview is small and not fully utilized? Where do you find the K-6 kids to fill McNair, right? So that is an issue with the schools that they're talking about moving into and utilizing the same space. They have not identified whether or not who would be responsible for things like utilities. So it's possible that the charter schools will get to keep that funding that they get per child, the same amount that you get from a public school system or the public school classrooms. But yet the public school side is paying for their cafeteria, they're paying for all of their infrastructure, they're paying for their utilities, everything. And then the charter school gets to keep that additional funding to either offer better programs to their students or to pocket it. All right, Kyle?
So if you don't know, the state of Florida passed, I think it's called School of Hope, it's really School of Note, about if you have a vacant building or you have spaces inside of a school, a charter school or other entities can come in and use those buildings, right? And some districts have tried to be creative about it because let's just be honest, there's an enrollment problem. We need to start there. That's a problem that does need to be solved. But some districts have been creative and said, listen, instead of the state of Florida has some conversion rate where they say X number of square feet in a classroom equals how many students the classroom can hold. If it's a closed wall, that's a classroom. So what some districts have literally done is cut holes in walls, put a new door in, had an open way, and now you have a larger classroom for PE. That actually makes your utilization look better to the state so that charter operators can't come in and take those spaces, right? That's one thing we need to do when we talk about utilization. But we also need to, what is causing these problems, right? How do we solve the underlying problem? Because I'm really running to try to solve practical problems, right? Let's just problem solve this whole thing. So the issue is we're losing students, right? And we can say declining a birth rate, but gotta be honest with you. Everywhere I drive, Brevard's growing, but our public schools are shrinking. There's more going on to that. And District 2, about 40% of students that are zoned for their home school do not choose their home school. That's 4 out of 10 students are lost either to a choice school, a charter school, a private school, or homeschooling. I'm all for parent choice, but we need to make it where our public schools are the best public schools in Brevard. So when you as a parent want to say, hey, let me choose where to send my child, I'm gonna send it to Brevard Public Schools because it's harder to send it anywhere else. And on the programs, we have to offer these programs because what's happened is we're causing our own problem. We saw it happen at Cape View. This board would love to do it at other places. They talked 2 days ago about how they could sell some properties. We're causing our own problem and decrease enrollment. Is that 15 seconds?
Yeah, you're done.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude.
Don't sit back down.
Oh.
All right, the next question. Teacher recruitment remains a statewide challenge, but retaining experienced teachers is equally important. Beyond compensation, what actions would you support to improve teacher retention and workplace morale?
Okay, I just want to finish my thought really quick. I'll get to your question. I'll run out of time. We're causing our own problem. We're creating this cycle where parents are leaving because they're not getting what they needed from our schools, and then we're saying they're under-enrolled and we're going to close them. That's why I want to solve that problem. Let's talk teacher recruitment, morale. I have negotiated, advocated for teachers for about 10 years now, maybe 8 years. The number one thing we have to do is stop micromanaging our teachers, get tasks off their plate. Yes, pay has to come up. Teacher pay in Florida is 50th in the nation. Think about, if we're last, think about all the states in front of us, right? I don't want to be rude to anybody, but start naming some of those states. Superintendent pay in Florida ranks like 2nd in the nation or something. There's an imbalance there. Wow. And the state has thrown a lot of money at it. And some of the reasons it hasn't increased average teacher pay or veteran teacher pay is because there's like 22 statutes or rules on how you pay a teacher. So number one is teacher pay. But the other big thing is micromanagement and taking things off the teacher's plate. I want to talk about what it looks like. The state of Florida said that you have to start doing progress monitoring on a whole new wide gap of students. It's important we monitor our students, right? But that created more work for the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher has to get those reports together, has to send those letters out to the parents, and then we keep adding it. And then next year, we're gonna bring in a new program, we're gonna bring in some digital tests, and we're gonna say, guess what, teacher, you have to do that too. And then when you sit there and look as a teacher, there was some weeks I didn't even get to teach because we were busy testing, we were doing tasks, we were doing state mandated training that had to be done for our students. So if we increase morale by letting our teachers be professionals, taking stuff off of them, it's really gonna improve teacher retention.
So one of the things that we really need to do is understand why teachers are leaving. We think we know, but we're not actually asking them when they leave. We actually need to understand why they're leaving. And with that, we need to implement things that will keep them here, right? The other thing is micromanagement is an issue that we hear about when we talk to them, one-to-one, and that is an issue. We do need to stop putting unnecessary tasks on their plates. We also need to get them more supports in the classroom. They're doing the job of more than one person, and we can say that it has to be something other than pay, but none of us do our jobs for free, and none of us do it because it was a calling. We do it because we have to pay our bills, and there's no reason that teachers should have to work 2 jobs in order to keep a roof over their heads. The other thing we need to do is we might have to get creative. Look, businesses do it all the time, right? They look at benefits. Benefits is one thing. Sometimes you have to get creative, looking at different ways to make teachers happy if you can't raise their pay. Can we look at programs that help them be healthier and things like that can help them be able to better handle the tasks that are at hand. Also, I know that I've mentioned before possibility of a 4-day work week. I am not sold necessarily on that issue, but that's the kind of outside the box thinking that we really need to take into consideration, because sometimes you can actually affect retention without pay.
Oh, that's right. When it's not my turn, I remember.
All right. The majority of our teachers are alternatively certified. How can we better support these teachers to keep them in the classroom?
So I know that we have mentorship programs and things like that, and some of them are great. Sometimes we do, in some cases like our CTE classes, we're best served by teachers who are second career teachers. A very good friend of mine is actually the district's Rookie Teacher of the Year, and I'm super proud of her. And when I talk about a calling, she found it this year, right? But she doesn't teach math and science. She teaches finance and the things that she's really good at. You don't want necessarily a math teacher. Well, you could have a math teacher teaching auto mechanics, but you know what I'm saying. Somebody who's very well versed in fixing cars is the person that you want to hire in auto mechanics. So there are definitely places to have those alternative teachers. But we don't necessarily need an alternative teacher teaching 3rd grade, right? They've never been taught how to break down lesson plans. They've never been taught how to manage a classroom. And so they're really struggling with those things. I actually had somebody that I spoke to who works at the district that told me there was a school, an elementary classroom that had 4 different teachers before Christmas break. So that's a problem. When we're throwing these teachers in, because we're hiring anyone that's breathing that has enough credentials that we can certify them to be in the classroom, they're not prepared for it, and they're struggling. And not just they're struggling, those students are struggling. Both of them, the teachers that are coming in and the students, it takes time to get to know each other. It takes time to learn their learning styles. It takes time to trust each other. And they're losing that. Those kids didn't learn anything that year, or they learned very little, and I doubt that they're seeing the kind of gains that we're looking for in reading and math.
So as an alternative certified teacher that taught elementary school, I actually have a lot of thoughts about this. It's crazy your first day of teaching. I was in the military, and then I had a biology degree, and they're like, oh, you can go teach. Here's some keys to an elementary classroom. And I walk into this 5th grade class, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? hardest thing I ever did in my life. I go back to basic training like 5 times over instead of sitting in that elementary classroom on the first day. So we need to make sure that we're giving the supports that they need, right? Because let's be honest, the thought that somebody's going to start one career, even if it's not teaching, and stick with that career for 30 years, for a lot of people that's gone, right? That there's too much movement in our country. The state of Florida got rid of professional teacher contracts, right? So every year you're an annual contract. Guess what? That contributes to teachers moving because they're a free agent. So we're gonna have alternative certified teachers. It's how do we train them? How do we keep them? And then as we keep more teachers, guess what? We don't have to keep hiring over and over again. Because the district will tell you, oh, we got like a 97% fill rate. They're gonna leave out the fact that every year they hire 400 to 600 teachers. It's a lot of new teachers. So what do those supports look like? I'll tell you what was amazing to me. I didn't go through the district's normal mentor teacher program. They had a really cool thing where I could use an iPad, I could record myself teaching, I had a book study, and then I got to sit there and watch myself teach and improve myself. I still follow the state rules for mentoring because a new teacher has to have so many evaluations, and that really worked for me. But part of the issue about when we evaluate teachers is it's tied to pay. So if you're a principal, you're a supervisor, when you're determining the feedback you give to a teacher, you're also determining how much money they take home. So we need to separate that a little bit. Teachers need to be accountable, but we need to create an environment where honest feedback can be given so you can grow. Because I know for a fact, as a first-year teacher, I was not the greatest. I improved every year.
All right, thank you. So what are your thoughts about year-round schools?
So none of our current schools are year-round. I don't like starting with the title year-round. We have one school on an expanded calendar. Basically, the student's year starts in July. Every 9 weeks, they get 3 weeks off. I think there's some benefits to that as for teachers, right? You're gonna get a break. Our students are actually also gonna get a break. But before we go to that and we visit that, one, we need to hear from the community. Because as I said before, at the end of the day, I'm running because I want to represent my community. And what they want is what we really need to focus on. That's how we can increase enrollment. But then we also need to make sure if we go to an expanded calendar, what does that look like for our families in need, right? It might be awesome for the family that can get a great deal on the cruise in the middle of October and do a family trip. But what about the family that doesn't ever leave, that, there's 2 parents or 1 parent and they're working every single day? How does that impact that family? How does that impact that student? Because if we're gonna change our student schedule, our number 1 goal should be student success. And if it's gonna be more successful for students, how do we do that? Can we offer services over the 3 weeks for tutoring? Can we make sure that we're, every summer, students leave the school in June and they come back in August, or May to August in Florida, and there's a learning gap. Our students lose learning that happened in May, and then our teachers in August have to fill that back up, right? So if we go to an expanded calendar or summer, year round, will that lower the learning gap? Well, we need to look at the data and study that. And that's why I really say we need to make sure we're having those wraparound services. So maybe when the kids are out of school for 3 weeks, they're actually coming to a Brevard public school to get some sort of enrichment. Maybe we're working with the cities, like the city of Cocoa, to make sure that we have programs for the students when we're out of those 3 weeks. So I would really want to investigate it more, but I'm open for some innovative ideas.
Kelly?
Yes.
There we go. So yeah, I definitely agree that it is something that should be looked at and studied. I've definitely heard some good things. I do know from the parent perspective that the district really wants to do that. It's being really pushed by some of our board members. There was a parent-teacher advisory meeting that they failed to leave an agenda for right about the holiday time, and they didn't let anybody know that they were going to get parent input on year-round school. And so they came back after nobody went to the meeting because there wasn't an agenda published, and they decided that it was overwhelmingly supported by parents. Maybe it is, right? But the parents did not weigh in. So I think this is one of those things we truly need to understand. Is this something that the community wants? Is this something that the community can support? And yes, does it help facilitate better learning gains and learning environment for our kids? I personally, as a parent, again, would love to take that off-season cruise and be able to go on some of those off seasons, and maybe that is a benefit to parents and families as well. But I think that you can't just, I think one of the things that our board likes to do is decide that that's something they want and implement it. What I think we really need to do is collect data and get community input and really understand what the impacts to our community are if we make a decision like that.
Okay.
And I'm gonna stay standing this time.
The next question. The district millage referendum will appear on the November ballot. Do you support the referendum? Why or why not? And if it is not approved, what strategies would you support to address the district's funding needs while maintaining educational quality?
I would absolutely never say no to millage, and I know I would never make it out of this room if I didn't. Gina would not let me out of this room. No, but millage is extremely important. Our teacher contracts actually have a provision for part of their salary tied to millage. If we do not pass millage, those teachers, especially our veteran teachers, because they are the ones that are more impacted by millage in their salaries than the newer teachers. The whole part of what millage did was when the state increased starting pay for teachers, it put our veteran teachers almost at par with our brand new inexperienced teachers. So of course, veteran teachers left. So that millage kind of covers that gap and allows us to pay veteran teachers a little bit more money than we're paying those inexperienced teachers. We will lose that experience if we lose millage. So that's just not something that we can do. In addition to millage, millage is about 80%, I believe, of salaries. The other part is going to student programs. It's been mentioned at a previous forum. It goes towards it can go towards band uniforms. It goes for officials at games and things like that, so that the schools can keep more of that concession stand money and gate fees and things like that they collect. It stays at the school, and then millage is paying for those officials. It's also paying for some of the technology in the classrooms, like the Promethean boards and things like that. But we do have a committee that reviews millage expenses and approves them and reviews them to make sure that the millage money is not being wasted.
So I fully support millage. I fully support the renewal. And full disclosure, I fully supported it 4 years ago because I visited classrooms, schools every afternoon for almost a month and a half, talking to our employees at Brevard Public Schools on why millage was important. When we talk about how much goes to teachers, I helped negotiate that contract. I actually wrote the scale to make sure our veteran teachers got taken care of, because there is a teacher pay issue in Florida. And there is an issue with how the state legislator lets you pay teachers. And we raised, as Ms. Wentworth said, we raised starting salaries, and it caught up to our veteran teachers. And that caused an issue. But we need to really, as Brevard Public Schools, communicate to taxpayers what we are doing with their money. We need to show them success, and we need to show them why it matters that we keep it. Yes, it's really important for our employees, and it's not just our teachers that benefit from that. It's our instructional staff that a lot of them start right about minimum wage or a little bit more. It's our bus drivers. It's everybody in our building and our schools that service our students. They benefit from the millage. But it's also important that we continue to show value, right? Another thing that we do with millage that a lot of people don't know is it helped aides in the kindergarten classroom. So a kindergarten teacher had an aide, right? Maybe we need to look at expanding that. Now, part of the question was, what happens if millage doesn't pass? I'm going to be honest with you. That's going to be a rough day in Brevard Public Schools. It's going to be a rough day because some of our staff members, they might make $60,000 and then they get an extra $10,000 from millage. So think about that. $10,000 of their salary comes from that millage. And no matter what happens this year, they'll get it to the end of the year because that's what's negotiated. But if it doesn't pass, we're going to have to really ask some hard questions. And we're going to have some discussions with the community if they decide that it doesn't pass. And one other point, it's really important for our arts programs because it has done a lot for music and art. It has helped pay for supplements for teachers and a bunch of additional stuff.
All right, the next question. What STEM opportunities should be offered?
Sorry, we're trying to remember which shoes.
Did you answer?
Yes, I
Okay,
did answer.
okay, this is the next one.
Yeah.
What other STEM opportunities should be offered at our district since we are the Space Coast?
So we need to make sure that our children in our schools can qualify for jobs at the Space Center. we need to make sure when we talk about STEM and our career technical programs that it doesn't matter where you live in this district, it doesn't matter what school you're zoned for, you are getting the same programs. You know, we need to make sure that if you go to Kennedy Middle, or if you go to McNair, or if you go to Vieira Middle, or if you go to Jackson, or if you go to West Shore, you're getting the same choices. It shouldn't matter where you live. And then we need to go partner with businesses, because I know people that work out at the Space Center. I bet you everybody in this room does. These corporations spend a lot of money recruiting people to Brevard County from outside of the state of Florida. Let's work with them, figure out the gaps, and then create a workforce that they need. So when our children graduate, they have a job in hand. I know right now we currently have a program with, not even all of our high schools have an automotive program, but some of them have an automotive program, and our children can team up with like Ford and some other vendors as well. And they're given a contract for $100,000 if they finish training. They're given tools as an 18-year-old to work on cars and some of our dealerships. That's what we need to focus more on. And we also need to make sure we're providing all the arts and science programs as well, not just the career programs. And it needs to be balanced. You know, what really frustrates me as somebody that has walked some of our choice schools, I don't understand why we can't have all those AP classes offered at all of our schools. And it needs to be innovated, right? My son goes to a school that doesn't have this program. But there's a school and he's of driving age and it's 5 minutes away and I'm a parent and I'm okay with signing that, then my child should be able to go take that class that the other school offers as well. We do it for sports, we do it for a lot of other stuff, so we need to make sure we're doing it for academics.
I think we need to continue those partnerships with businesses. I know, Northrop Grumman is one that I know feeds a lot into our schools. They also have programs where if you're volunteering at least 40 hours a week, you can actually get grants for the schools or any of the nonprofits that you're working with. We've done that as a family, and we always do that back to the schools. But yeah, the Space Coast, we should be working with the businesses that are unique to this area and making sure that we are offering programs to our students that get them those jobs afterwards. One of the successes that we have with that is they're doing the water treatment classes at Cocoa Beach junior senior high school. They're doing that in preparation for the new aquarium that's being built, right? Those are the kind of things that we need to look at and continue that and see what we can do. Definitely working with NASA, definitely working with Blue Origin and SpaceX and all those companies that are here, Northrop, Harris. Anytime we can use those people to help us form more classes to make sure, because what we really need to make sure that we're not doing is deciding what the community wants. We need to make sure that the businesses and the communities are telling us what they need and helping us get there and to provide that. Because otherwise we're just wasting money and we're just putting programs out there that aren't gonna help our kids get jobs.
Yes. The next question. Hiring and evaluating the superintendent is one of the school board's most important responsibilities. What qualities and performance measures would you use to evaluate the superintendent?
I think first and foremost, why did they leave their last position? In fact, our current superintendent lost his job over a $1.3 million transfer of funds that happened that went to about 12 schools for positions that didn't exist. And now he's our superintendent and we don't have a CFO. So I'd like to know that we have a superintendent that understands all sides of the business, right? We need to make sure that we have a superintendent that understands the classroom, understands the needs of the classroom, and understands how to lead the district in the classroom. But it's also a $1.6 billion business, essentially, and we need to make sure that they're qualified to handle that too. So we need a well-rounded superintendent.
So we currently have a superintendent. If we were to go to look for another one, my number one goal would be to find a superintendent that knows how to lead, knows how to be compassionate, knows how to problem solve, and listen to all sides. Because I've gotten phone calls before that are the craziest phone calls you'll ever hear about something that happened in a school. And usually about half of it's right. Usually, sometimes I gotta be honest, even what the teacher told me is about half right, but the parent told me is about half right. And then you have to problem solve that. So we need to hire a leader. We need to hire somebody that inspires, We need to hire somebody that's focused on our students. And honestly, the size of our district, when you compare it to the nation, we probably should hire somebody with a proven track record. I just gotta be honest, the way Florida does school boards, like we are, I think, top 50th largest in the nation. So we probably need to make sure we're hiring a superintendent that reflects that experience and knows how to lead a staff of 9,000 people. Because at the end of the day, the school board actually fires and hires very few people. It's the superintendent and the attorney. And then they represent us as a school board and they lead the district. So that's gonna be my qualities that I would look for.
Right. Next question. Yes. What are your thoughts about cursive writing and and how it helps learning and reading?
So I have a teacher I used to work with that she always bailed me out on cursive writing. But first of all, it's a Florida state statute. It's in our sunshine standards. It has to be taught, flat out, and it needs to be taught, right? I'm a full believer if it's a standard, we need to cover it because our kids are actually tested on that as well. But, yeah, cursive is probably a lost skill. Some would say, like, who's writing a letter to their grandparents in cursive anymore at 10 years old? But it's actually really important for students to learn because the way our brains work is we make connections. So when we're doing stuff and it's like a math manipulative, I taught math. But when we're doing cursive, we're actually training our brain. We're helping it learn. It helps with motor skill function. It helps with so much other than just the writing on the paper. And also, let's be honest, when we're doing cursive, we can be teaching other subjects, right? We can do cursive in history. We can do, well, in elementary, it's not so much history, it's more like civics and stuff. But anyways, we can do cursive in science. We can do cursive in English. So there's a lot of capabilities for us to apply to. And as somebody that really wants our kids off of less electronics at the younger age, I think putting a pencil in their hand and letting them learn cursive is really important.
So, I actually had, out of both of my kids, one of them went to the same school. One of them learned cursive and the other didn't, and they were about 2 years apart. And now it's back to being a standard, so I have one kid that doesn't know how to write cursive. I do think that it's a valuable skill to have, but I also look, and again, it's a state statute, so it is going to be taught in schools. But I also have to look at the fact that why did we stop learning cursive? Because they're putting so much on our kids that it was something they took out of the classroom to give us more time to hit all the other things. So we'd have to make sure that we're not overburdening our classrooms and our teachers. The thing that I would like to see come back too is typing. My kids are amazed that I can type a letter without ever looking at my keyboard because that's what I was taught in school. And as much as we can fight against electronics, they're not going anywhere. And so cursive is a valuable skill, but so is typing. And that's something we are not learning at all. And so that's an issue as well.
Yes. Despite almost tripling of the state mental health budget and extra state funding to implement, it does not appear that Brevard County is really compliant with the state law that implements the in-school mental health treatment. How would you correct this?
Yeah, so my understanding at this week's board meeting was they actually decided that they didn't need some of the social workers that they had budgeted for the classrooms. They were actually budgeted for 10. They hired 6 and decided they needed 4. So I'm hearing from folks that we don't have the right mental health people into our classrooms and that it is a state statute that my understanding is we're not following. I have not seen that data. I am taking this from someone who pulled me aside to talk to me. So I believe them. It's one of those things that I would have to look into, and I would definitely be looking into once I made it onto the board. But we talk a lot about the safety and security of our students. That begins with their mental health. So that is an extremely important area that we need to be compliant in, and we need to make sure that our students are getting the supports that they need.
So I'm unaware of the exact program you're discussing and what the requirement from the state is. But at the end of the day, if it's a requirement, we need to be doing it. But I need to talk about when we say the state tripled mental health funding. The state does a lot of cute things with their budget. They give you money and then they put mandates on it that you can't fully afford with the money they gave you. So for instance, the state may send you $1 million and say you need to hire 100 teachers to do X job. Well, hiring 100 teachers might cost 10 million. And the state will look at you and say, well, we sent you $1 million, you figure it out. And it happens in mental health, it happens in school security, it happens in a lot of other departments in the classroom as well. So I know there was an audit that we were deficient on certain things for the state as well. And mental health is one we probably can't be deficient on. So we need to make sure we're meeting that goal. And when we talk about school safety, and Ms. Wentworth mentioned it as well, yes, it's very important that we have an SRO at all our schools. It's very important that we're protecting people. We have that force there. But mental health is one of those things that helps us be proactive. Unfortunately, if you go look at a lot of the tragedies that have happened on a school campus, a lot of those have been from a current student, a former student, or somebody with a connection to that school, and they probably could have been prevented. So it's important.
Next question. How do you plan to help kids that need a guidance counselor when all schools do not have access?
Yeah, I didn't know all schools that have access. I would look at that day one and fix it. Like, I do think another thing that's important is when we put guidance counselors or school counselors in our schools, when we put career counselors in secondary, that we're not overwhelming them with tasks that they can't do their primary function. Because I would probably argue, even if there was schools that had one, they're probably overwhelmed with tasks and they're not getting to see students. And that's what they were hired for. That's what they want to do. And it would really help with retention. Once again, we take tasks off of our plate and we let them be the professionals they are. But I would solve that day one.
Kelly?
So as a parent, I've actually never, my kids have never attended a school that didn't have a guidance counselor, so I'm a little shocked to hear that, but that's just unacceptable. There should be a guidance counselor in every school, full stop.
All right. The next question. How are school breakfasts and lunches monitored regarding nutrition and caloric intake for growing children?
To be honest, I don't know what the state standards are for nutrition. I've looked at my kids' lunches. I mean, my kids prefer to bring their own lunch because what they're being served is not nutritious. I know it's not that it's not nutritious, but the way that they get to those nutrition guidelines, I think the nutrition guidelines may be a little bit outdated. I know in some cases they're very carb heavy. I've seen indications where they're just putting something on the plate to make sure they hit that standard. The other thing we need to look at is we've got to get creative with kids, right? They're not going to eat something that's not appealing to them. We can't just throw, pizza at them or, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that don't have peanut butter on them because we have peanut allergies in the class. But we need to really look at making it appealing food. The other thing that really drives me nuts about nutrition in the schools is the ice cream at the end of the line, all the junk food that is available to the kids, the fruit cups that are full of syrup and things like that. I mean, my kid, somebody had to stop me one time and told me that they had to tell my kid to stop taking the extra fruit off of the cart because of all the sugar they were consuming, because my kid saw fruit and was excited to eat that. So we also need to make sure that we're teaching kids what the nutritional standards are, and maybe using lunchtime as a way to kind of teach them better habits and help them find a love of food that is actually better for them.
So I don't know the exact standard. I know a lot of that actually comes from the FDA and it's tied to federal funding. So if they give you $1, you have to spend it this way, right? And I do know, I think if any of us stood up for school board and said, I'm running a fixed school lunch, we'd probably win overwhelmingly, right? Let's just be honest about it. But there's so much that, because of funding and how it's tied and the requirements to it, that we don't control as a school board member. But I do know there are some things Brevard Public Schools is currently doing, and I would probably want to increase it and look at how we can do it more. I know when they're renovating cafeterias currently, they're pushing in more salad bars, more fresh food options like that. That's really important. We also need to make sure that our kids have enough time to get lunch, right? Because that's part of the issue as well. Some of our school bell calendars, our schedules are just so packed that if you're at a large school, your child might not even have the opportunity to go through the lunch line and have the time to sit down and eat a nice meal. So I would look into anything somebody brings me, and yeah, I think we need to improve school lunch, but I know it's a really hard thing to do because of the way the funding's tied to the restrictions from the federal government. That's probably one place where the government could get out of our way.
All right, next question. Brevard County is home to many military families who relocate frequently and rely on schools to provide stability during times of transition. With the ongoing challenges such as teacher turnover, low reading proficiency, and the expansion of the state school voucher program, what specific steps would you take as a school board member to ensure military-connected students are successfully integrated into our schools and receive the academic and emotional support they need to thrive?
Yeah, it was a long one. But as a veteran and somebody that's married to an Army brat, I kind of understand this issue kind of firsthand. All my wife's siblings were also Army brats as well and traveled. I think my wife went to 3 middle schools one year. So I think it's important that students have to build connection to their schools. So first of all, obviously we need to help with enrollment, and we need to, apply common sense. When somebody brings us a student to enroll that's a military family, they may have a few transfers. Might be hard getting some records. We need to help them with that. But most importantly, we need to build connections to our schools. We need to create a community. We need to have events that engage them. And I know our district is doing some stuff, but we probably need to make sure we're doing stuff for military families as well. And maybe large events throughout the year so they build that community and it helps cross the barrier. The other thing I would really be interested in looking at, and I'm just going off the top of my head, and they may already have this, is somebody that's focused on helping not just military families, but families that are struggling with enrollment and going through the process. Yes, it's going to be military families as well, but it may be students in transition. It may be a homeless family. It may be a family that moved here and for whatever reason they're missing a document. Because oftentimes, I think for increasing enrollment, our school secretaries and our front offices in our schools can be a big enemy of just having an open dialogue with parents. Because no fault of their own, but they see a requirement that a student needs these 10 documents to enroll. And honestly, maybe we can get through the first week with 9 of them and get the other one while the student's learning. So I would want to look into stuff like that.
Kelly?
So we definitely know that we have several of our schools in this district that are purple ribbon schools, so they are known for helping to support our veterans that are coming in. I think that we do need to look at making sure those kids are successfully integrating and monitoring them. A lot of the things we've talked about that we need to improve in schools go a long way into helping those those military families integrate into schools too, making sure we have guidance counselors on staff who can help make sure that they're coming in and getting settled and everything, and including, I know we've got a lot of peer mentorships where the kids get together at lunch or things like that because they have a common issue. Maybe they're all going through divorce with their parents and things like that. We can also do that for military families as well, and also identify maybe a military child who's been there a little bit longer that can help kind of show a young child the ropes. But I know that we do have a lot of schools dealing with that, so I hope that they're having programs that are doing that, and I think that's another way we can get creative in trying to, meet our children where they are. Every kid that comes in has something special and something that they need addressed, and I think if we start looking at the schools as a community and address that community as a whole, that'll go a long way in helping those kids as well.
Next question. If there is an option to close a lottery school over a community school, are you willing to close the lottery school to protect a community school? For example, Cape View versus Freedom 7.
As a child, as a parent,
As a parent that has made my last commute to Freedom 7 after 9 years, that one goes into my heart. But I think that you can't separate a choice school from a zone school, right? They all need to be evaluated on their merits. I will tell you, Freedom 7 is a fully utilized school, but I'll also tell you that it doesn't always get the love either. We actually had a full year where we actually had to share our principal with Roosevelt because they decided that Each of those schools had approximately 400 students in them, and so take a Manatee that has 700 students, and that principal could easily cover both schools. What they didn't take into consideration is an unknown alarm going off in the middle of the day when the principal's at the other school, which has actually happened while I was on campus. So I think that you can't just, in this case, I don't know that that's a fair comparison, because again, lottery schools are full. So, but we need to look at it as a holistic approach, right? Maybe there's not enough student body to fill 3 elementary schools in Cocoa Beach. Maybe one of the utilization things that we do is look at more choice schools, and that gives parents, we've talked about having to give parents choice and giving parents a reason to want to put their kids in public schools. Choice schools are very popular for a reason, and maybe if we make those a little bit more accessible to students. I was driving my kids from Rockledge to Cocoa Beach every day, twice a day for 9 years. So making those a little bit more accessible to areas like Cocoa and Rockledge and make those different programs available to students might be a way that we can bring some of those students back.
Am I standing or am I sitting? I'm sitting.
So this is a hard question. I like it. So let's be honest. We have an enrollment problem in Brevard Public Schools. Some of that problem is the way we zone our schools. Does choice schools have an impact on that? Yes. So if I was evaluating schools to close, I would say every option is on the table and nobody is spared from it, right? But my goal isn't to close schools. My goal is to improve enrollment and not have that issue, right? And I want to talk about choice schools because I've been on campuses at choice schools. I've been on the campus at Edgewood, and then I go to Cocoa High. And I ask myself, it frustrates me as a parent who has children in Edgewood, that is a choice school, and it's the closest school to our house. And that's actually, should be the school I'm zoned for, but we did zone it in choice. It frustrates me as a parent and as a teacher to walk in Edgewood and see all these amazing opportunities for our students, and then go to a school, and I really don't want to single out Cocoa High or Merritt Island High, but let's just be honest. Go to another secondary school, it's probably the same way for Freedom 7 versus an elementary school, and our students don't have that same option. I don't care what we say. I'm a firm believer that if you hold your students to a high expectation, they meet that expectation every single time. So one of my arguments is whatever we're doing in the choice school that's making it work, I guarantee you we can do it in all of our schools. But I do want to talk about choice schools and probably some of the reason why we have them. If we look at charter school growth in Brevard County, there is a lot of charter schools in the south of the county. There's not a lot of charter schools in Merritt Island and Central Brevard. There's choice schools in Central Brevard. So parents that would not send their kids to Brevard public schools chose a choice school. And I've sat with so many parents and they told me, oh, my kids don't go to VPS, they go to Stevenson, they go to Edgewood, they go to Freedom 7, West Shore, whatever it is. That's a VPS school. So I come back to, let's make all of our schools as good as our choice schools, then we don't have this problem.
I gotta stay right in there.
I think so.
Yes. How would you ensure schools have enough highly qualified teachers in critical shortage areas, such as exceptional student education?
So,
I have worked this issue firsthand. I have worked with the district to increase supplements for ESE teachers. I have worked with the district to make sure we are, making sure they have the services they need in their classroom. But we can't keep recruiting ourselves out of this hole. We have to keep the people in our building and start building that, right? And then we talked a little bit about ESE already. I think it's so important that we look at that teacher's load, because it's really easy to say an ESE teacher has 7 students. How hard can that be? I'm a 6th grade teacher and I had 28. Let me tell you, it is a world of difference. And let's be honest, if we look at the funding of an ESE student, more than likely, they might be getting double what we get for a regular student. I'm not trying to say our students are dollars, but if we're getting extra funding for an ESE student, we need to make sure it goes to the ESE classroom and supports that teacher's need. So that's what I would really look at, but it's a retention problem. We can't keep recruiting ourselves out of this hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think we need to understand why they're leaving, right? And I know that the ESC teachers are under, different challenges than a standard teacher, but they're leaving for a reason, and we need to figure that out. We need to be asking them why they're leaving and addressing those issues. They're under some of the same issues. They're got too much on their plate and not enough support to do the teaching that they want to do. Some of them are leaving because it's breaking their heart that they can't serve the students the way they want to serve them. Right. The other thing is like, Mr. Savage mentioned it earlier. We were at the McNair principals meeting earlier this week, and he said one of his teacher retention issues is the fear of closing the school. We're talking about closing the schools and talking about it, and then all of a sudden they close one school, but we're still talking about utilization problems. They're not involving the community. They're creating a lot of fear with their lack of transparency, and that affects the mental health of our teachers because, our family was once facing layoff, and I remember telling my husband, don't be the person that turns the lights out on the way out the door, right? Their teachers are the same way. They don't want to be the one who has to hire a U-Haul to get all their stuff out of their classroom when it closes. So they're preemptively leaving to a school that feels safer.
All right, the next question. As a school board member, you will work as one of 5. What skills do you have, and what will you do to work to get your priorities enacted?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a team effort. I know one of the things that I like to say about this election is if you don't like the way the school board is, the way they're making decisions, we can actually flip the school board this year with 3 vacant seats, right? We do have a block right now that makes most of the decisions, and we can change that. Right? I've already started working with some of the other candidates and talking to them, and we help each other. I'll tell you, I don't know every single issue that I'm standing up here, right? But the other candidates and the other school board members, they do. I'm running on the fact that you need a very diverse board. You need different areas of expertise. Former teachers don't have the finance background I have. I don't have all the classroom exact knowledge that the teachers have. And together, we combine that knowledge and we are a powerhouse, and we move this district into being something amazing.
That was my second question, right?
Yes.
So I've worked with some of the current board members, and this is actually one of my skills that I think is really sets me out. I start with everybody is coming from a good place until you show me you're not. That's where I start with. We need to compromise for our students. And yeah, some concerns and decisions a board makes doesn't make sense to me. But I also have to start with, I know what's important to District 2, and I know my background. I don't necessarily know what their reasoning is for District 5 and their background, or District 1 and their background. So if every day we're trying to problem solve, we're trying to look for those practical solutions, I really think we can get stuff done. Yes, do we need a change on this board? 100%, or else I wouldn't be running for school board. But we also have to recognize every time we go in there, to your question, there's 5 of us. We need 3 votes at the end of the day. And honestly, we probably want more than 3 votes because it's better when we're all have buy-in and we're all working together. You know, as a classroom teacher, I used to always want my students to have ownership. So if all of us on the board make a decision, we have the ownership to make sure it's successful. So I really think it's important, even when I disagree with somebody, to start with, let me put myself in their shoes. Let me try to understand where they're coming from, and hopefully they do the same. Am I naive to the world and everybody's going to do the same? No, I know they're not, but I really think that's how we problem solve, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day what we argue about. What matters is, are our students successful in the classroom? Are they getting what they need? Are our teachers, our employees, our families getting that same thing?
Kelly? Oh, is it my turn?
No,
I was gonna say, I feel like I was just standing.
Okay, sorry. What are your thoughts on the board possibly hiring a marketing firm to help with pulling students back to public school that are homeschooled or in private school or at a charter school?
We should have done that yesterday. Like 1,000%. Now we need to look at the contract and make sure we're not overspending. But I actually worked with this, not this board, but when I was with BFT, we helped create a plan with the comms department to go out and poll parents that left. I mean, we had t-shirts and we were door knocking, asking parents, why did they leave Brevard Public Schools? We also worked with VPK programs to see how does it work when a child's in a VPK program. How can we capture all of them in the Brevard Public Schools? What are the charter schools doing that we're not doing? Well, sometimes they're just visiting and passing out pamphlets, right? And then that goes home with the parents. So we worked to make sure that that went home with all the students. I also know, I think Brevard Public Schools is still doing this. They're doing like a Thrive for 5. So if your child's born in a Brevard hospital, my child got it too. You get this really cool bag that comes with books and it has Brevard Public Schools on it. But it's all about marketing. It's all about getting to those students first. I hate looking at our students as dollars, and we are a business, but we are. We're a business and educating our students. So how do we get that message out? Do I want to pay $5 million to a marketing firm? No. But I'm also a realist that knows somebody knows marketing better than I do, and probably the classroom teacher isn't the best person to develop a marketing plan.
I don't believe our issue is a PR problem. Our issue is we have students that don't feel like, and parents that don't feel like our kids are getting the best education from our classrooms. I think we're creating this cycle. We've been cutting programs, especially to like our ESC kids or kids, I've heard bullying problems and things like that. So we're pushing those kids out, right? And then what's happening is we're losing funding for those kids, and now we're cutting more services. So we're losing more kids, and we're creating this cycle over and over and over again. Parents aren't leaving because they think that the schools aren't great. They're leaving because they believe that. So we've got to start making our looking at the issues in our schools and working on those problems, and then we start to get those kids back.
All right, the next question. Share your thoughts on the K-8 model. And how do we address parents' concerns?
So this was brought up at a school board. It came up not the last working session, but the session before. And I'm kind of surprised because we paid money to a consulting firm, and they put together a really awesome tool that a month ago we were told was getting rolled out in a week. So I'm sure you guys haven't heard about it because I've been dying to share it. But it actually is this model where you can actually play with the utilization. All the utilization of our schools have been loaded in. BPS is actually hoping you'll play with the model and solve the utilization problem for them, because you can actually redistrict people in this model and then save it and actually send it to the district. But this model came about because they are looking at K-8. They're specifically looking at Stone, Jefferson, and McNair. Okay, that's what they're looking at it for the 27 school year. After hearing the consultants, and again, it's one board meeting that I listened to, and it started getting me thinking. Maybe K-8 isn't the worst model in the world, and it may solve some of our utilization problems, especially in the middle of the district, right? If we build new schools that are custom built for, with better technology, better, we're not gonna have mold problems because they're newer buildings. Hopefully we don't have mold problems with newer buildings. But a purpose-built K-8 school. What we can't do is what they were originally talking about and retrofitting a very old school like McNair and retrofitting it to a K-8. So I'm not saying I'm definitely a fan of K-8 because my initial reaction is I don't like that idea. I don't like mixing kindergartners with 8th graders, right? But my understanding is in a purpose-built school, they're going to separate those kids. It may be the right answer for the situation we're in. I think it takes a lot more research, but it is something they're definitely talking about right now. And it definitely needs community input, and they need to be hearing from the community on how we feel about it.
So, Brevard Public Schools is one of 2 districts in the state of Florida that has 6th grade in elementary. We don't have a lot of uniformity in our secondary schools. Some of our secondary schools are a middle school, 7th, 8th grade. Some of them are 9th to 12th grade. Some of them are 7th to 12. So I do think we need to look at maybe making it uniform for parents, right? It just makes it easier. But the K-8 model is interesting, and one of the reasons I could probably be sold on it is you're gonna get a student in kindergarten and they go to the same building till 8th grade. And if you're a family and you have multiple students, it's so much easier on that family. And we really need to think about that problem, right? We also need to think about, when is the school board talking about this? Because I watched the workshop. I was just like, what? We're doing this in the middle of the day when everybody's at work, everybody's trying to raise their family and just survive, and we're talking about closing schools, remodeling schools, and building new schools. I'm not taking money from developers, so I'm really not thinking we need to go out and build a bunch of new schools at the same time we're talking about closing schools. I come back to, we have a zoning issue. We have an enrollment issue. How do we solve those? And I'll talk about one of the zoning issues. I live on Merritt Island. I live right near the Barge Canal. My children are zoned to go to middle school at Jefferson Middle, an amazing middle school. Courtney stinks. I'll try to use a nice word. If anybody drives Courtney every day, they know what I'm talking about. For some families that live north of the Barge Canal, it is almost a shorter drive to get to Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High than the middle school your students are zoned for. You know, when we talk about middle schools that may get turned into the K-8 model, guess what? They're low enrollment because they're 7th and 8th grade. And we have 6th graders in portables at some schools. So why do we have a 6th grader in a portable and we have a middle school that's empty when we are one of 2 counties in the whole state of Florida that has 6th grade in elementary school? So I think there's a lot we can do around this.
Next question. Share how you have advocated for BPS teachers in the past.
So in 2019, I was a teacher in the classroom. I went to a bargaining session about our teacher contract. And the district didn't really offer us a raise. I think it was a couple $100. And when you split that out over a check, it's really a couple dollars. Like, you can't even get an extra Starbucks for the month with that. So I started going to school board meetings. That's how I'm here today. That's how I got involved. I sat in a school board meeting where there was 1,000 people in red shirts. And the school board said, you know what, we don't agree with your numbers. We don't agree with a magistrate that said it was in the best interest of paying teachers. And we don't agree with the community that came out. We're not giving you that raise. That's how I got involved in this. I started studying budgets. I started going to school board meetings. I started advocating for teacher pay. Not just teacher pay, but everything that surrounds a teacher. Because I firmly believe that if we do the right thing by teachers, we're doing the right thing for students. If we're doing the right thing for parents, we're doing the right thing for students. So I've advocated for teacher pay. I've advocated for paternity leave. We were the first in the state of Florida to offer any type of parental leave to public school employees. We are now one of 2, I believe. Somebody could fact check me. I'm pretty sure they copied our language in that county as well. So I know this issue. I've been at the bargaining table when our district has treated our employees like they were buying a used car off the side of the lot that says $99 pay here. So this issue is personal to me. I've been in the classroom and I understand all these issues. And honestly, if that board in 2019 didn't vote against that teacher raise, I probably wouldn't be standing here today, because that's what got me involved in advocating for teachers.
So given my background, I haven't had the opportunity to, have a formal advocacy for teachers, as some of the other candidates have, but it's part of why I'm standing here, right? So part of my background is I originally wanted to be a teacher. And I'll give you the short version. I left school for a little bit, and when I came back, I was told that I was gonna have to take a pay cut when I finished my degree on top of the student loans that I had. So I made a pivot and I got my accounting degree. But I've always had this passion for teachers, and I'm always willing to listen to what they need and help advocate for them. I mean, one of the small things I did as a parent is during COVID, I was getting emails from the teacher at 3 a.m. And we had to go to school for an issue, and I told the assistant principal, I don't need emails at 3 a.m. If this is a night owl teacher, and that's what she wants to do, great. But I can wait a day or 2 to get a grade for my student if it's to protect the mental health of the teacher, right? I do what I can. It's not, I haven't had the opportunity at that level, but that's why I go into the schools and I do teacher appreciation days. If I hear a need from a teacher, I jump in and I do it, right? That's why I've put my volunteer time in the schools. That's why I was there a lot. I was working in the library because there was a need for that. So I've really, teachers are my passion, and I'm doing this because I want to help teachers, be happy here and enjoy the work that they do. Because when in my early career, one of the philosophies of a company I was at is if you take care of your customers, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers. If we take care of our teachers, they're gonna take care of our students.
Second to last question. What partnerships with families, community organizations, local government, and community agencies would you prioritize to reduce chronic absenteeism?
I don't know if there's specific groups that I would specifically partner with to reduce absenteeism, but I do think that's an issue. I know when we were at McNair earlier, they talked about sometimes there's absenteeism because there may not be a strong father figure in the life of some of these kids. So at Emma Jewel, what they do every beginning of the year, they have the fathers line up and they high five and shake hands with all the kids as they come in. There's, talking about programs where they call it dad duty, where the dads come in, and different fathers from the community, and they come in to be that father figure to the kids, making sure they're getting to class on time, making sure, they're behaving in the classroom, things like that. So those are the kind of things you can do. I'd also like to look into why we have an absenteeism problem. I mean, there are girls that miss a week of school every month because they don't have what they need to come to class. That's a partnership that we could be making too, right? So again, it's all back to why are these kids not coming to school, and then finding the partnerships and getting the community involvement to take care of that.
I would work with any single person in Brevard County that wants us to help get kids to school, flat out. If you want to volunteer, we need to do more stuff to get our students into a classroom. Why is it so important? Just to be really quick. If a student, think about this. If you're missing one day of school, it's about 7 hours of instructional time. Times that by 10, that's 70. That's like 2 weeks of school. Currently, first of all, I'm a huge fan of parents taking their children on experiences and doing stuff with their children. Because I'll be honest with you, my children would learn more on a trip to Washington, D.C. than they'll ever learn sitting in a classroom. But we also have to hold students accountable for when they're absent. Just be honest with you. If you don't come to school for 20 days, you probably shouldn't be getting a grade that reflects somebody else that came to school for 20 days. And if you are, we need to look into that. But I would partner with any single individual, group, or community that wants to help get our students into schools.
Last question. If you had a magic wand and could change any one thing about Brevard schools, what would that be?
I would fix our enrollment issue.
Teacher pay, that would be my thing. Teachers deserve way, way, way more than we will probably ever find the funds to pay them.
Okay, now we're gonna go into closing statements. You have 2 minutes to do your closing.
Well,
Why do I keep turning the microphone off? So thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to the NAACP and the League of Women Voters for having us here this evening. I know you've heard a lot of differing ideas this evening, but I think one thing is absolutely clear. This election is not about politics. It's about leadership in our schools. Our district is facing difficult decisions. We're facing declining enrollment. We're facing increasing financial pressures, right? We need leaders who are willing to step up and do what's best for our teachers and our students, right? We need to realize that every decision that we make affects a child sitting in a classroom. And that needs to be at the heart of every decision we make. We've got to stop. I've been sitting in these board meetings, and what I'm really appalled at is the lack of questions. After a presentation happens, they're just patting themselves on the back. This is great, this is awesome, this is amazing, right person for the right job. And in many cases it is. We've got some great staff at the district. But nobody's asking questions and challenging what they're being given. They're just going, yep, this is a great idea, I'm glad we're doing it. So we really need leadership on our board that's going to listen to what's going on and making the hard decisions and asking thoughtful questions that help lead our district forward and make it I love our public schools. I love our teachers. I want the board to be moving in a direction that supports that. And that's why I'm running. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for having this forum. Thank you for coming and showing up like some of our opponents didn't. Running for office has been really fun, right? But most importantly, I think our students deserve a leader that understands the passion of a classroom and also isn't afraid of being accountable and transparent to the voters. I think we need to focus every day on our students and elect somebody that wants to have common sense leadership and practical problem solving. That's my goal. Every single day when I was in the classroom, I fought for students. When I fought for teachers, I was still fighting for students. And I really think we need a leader that's ready to serve our community. So if you agree with me, please check out savage4students.com and get involved or just see what we're up to. And if you want to help, I'm sure some people in this room are active, let me know how you can help us change the trajectory of Brevard Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for all of those questions. There was a lot. And thank you all for your attention. You all did great. I never saw so many questions being proposed, so thank you for doing that. Two things before we go. One is two other places you can get some information. So this forum will be edited and put on our YouTube channel. We have all of our forums we're putting on YouTube channel, not just the candidate forums, but all of the events that we do as well. So there's a lot of really good information on there. We're starting to build a really good library. So I'd encourage you to go onto YouTube and look for League of Women Voters of the Space Coast and subscribe so you don't have to do that looking for it again. It'll just pop up next time. Excuse me, I have a little bit of cough, so I have a cough drop. And in addition to the forum, another great place to get information is vote411.org. That's a website that's owned by the League of Women Voters of the National League of Women Voters, and it has information that's nonpartisan provided to us by the candidates. So we create questions, send them to all the candidates, and most of the candidates write back to us and give us their answers, and we put them verbatim on that website. We don't edit it in any way. We put what the candidates say. You put in your address and it'll pop up your entire ballot, and you can click on the different pieces of information that you're looking for, and you can compare the candidates' answers on questions that perhaps we didn't ask, or perhaps a candidate that is not present today. There are some bookmarks in the back that have that website if you want to take a look at it. Thank you so much for coming. Again, we have other candidate forums coming up. I encourage you to look at the table in the back and grab some information before you go. And thank you very much for your attention.